How many times have you said, if I only could focus a little bit more, I'd be able to get through this? Or if I could adapt to this new situation, I, I, I want to get to this new thing, but I haven't let go of the new thing. I can't let it go. If I can only adapt to this new situation, embrace this new normal, then I'm going to be all right. Or if I had more time, extra night, an hour, something, a moment, that I could really help this project fly. Or if I could just get a little bit more energy, a good night's sleep, a nap, something at the bottom of this cup of coffee, that would be amazing. And I could truly shine. How many times have you said that? I know I've said that countless times, usually when I'm praying to the gods of deadlines. But what I've found over the years as an entrepreneur, as a creative, as a public speaker, and speaking to literally thousands of them, is that we always have that. We always have the ability to focus, to adapt, to have time, and to have energy. You can call them the fates, F-A-T-E. We always have them. They are actually part of our human experience. If we don't have any anymore, we're not alive. If you have zero energy, you're not functioning. And so as long as we're living and breathing, we can continue to create and make amazing things. We have that ability. We tend to get confused, though, because those resources, that focus, that agility, that time, and that energy tends to change depending on our personal and professional circumstances. For instance, if you're an 85-year-old retiree, then you're probably hyper-focused, F, because you spent 9 decades spending time trying to figure out what you really care about. That's actually the blessing of being that old. But you might not be as agile, A, because you spent 9 decades figuring out what you care about. You don't need as much stimuli to figure out what matters in your life. Now, you might have a lot of time, T, because if you're blessed enough to have no major health issues and be in good shape otherwise, then you're only focused on yourself and or your partner. And lastly, energy, E, you might not have as much. Now, I have good friends that are in their 80s, even in their 90s. We talk regularly. They have a lot of energy. They understand, and we understand, that they are the exception to the rule. So we start to get into trouble and start to have challenges when we start to see what we lack compared to another person. We start to feel guilt and shame when we worry about how someone else is executing something and not how we would execute it. Or vice versa. We start to shame and judge other people when they're doing things differently than how we would do them. So let's say this 85-year-old retiree is connected with a 25-year-old grad student. The grad student, their focus, F, might not be that great because they have so much stuff going on and they're only 25. They're still trying to figure out, for lack of a better term, their life purpose. But they might be really agile, A, because they're trying to figure out their life purpose. You know, when you're in your 20s, that next book, the next quote, the next class you take, next person you date could end up changing the course of your life. That is amazing. So of course you're going to be adaptable to different things because you don't know what's going to change the course of your life. Time, T, might not be that high. I remember being a 20-something grad student, and I know my time was spent working on my dissertation. I know my time was spent trying to figure out how I was going to make a living to pay for the grad school. And lastly, I was just trying to have a social life in between all that. Time was very much a premium. But energy, though, that's off the charts because you're 25. It's not until you get older where you realize how much energy you actually had when you were 25, right? But what happens when you get these two people in the room, the 85-year-old retiree and a 25-year-old grad student? Imagine the younger person saying, hey, let's work on this project together. Let's get this done. Let's make an impact on the world. Let's just do a couple all-nighters and we can get it done this week. It's probably not going to work that well, right? Because remember, the 85-year-old's focus or main thing is focus and time. So that's powerful enough to make the Grand Canyon, but it's not necessarily powerful enough to make you stable and strong when you're doing all-nighters. Or imagine an 85-year-old going to a 25-year-old and saying, hey, we care about this. We're both passionate about it, Why don't we spend the rest of our lives focused on this one thing? You'd probably get laughed out the room. And that's because they're at different places. So we tend to have challenges because we look at what we lack. If we're having a hard time focusing, then we tend to not pay attention to how much time we might have. If we don't have a lot of time, only have more time, then we tend to not pay attention to how adaptable we are to different circumstances. That's where our strengths lie, and they vary from moment to moment and life to life. Now, this has been an interesting year to study this stuff for a numerous amount of reasons, but two in particular. Back in March, everyone in my social circles, from friends and family to clients, to people that I saw from afar, suddenly went into one of two camps. I don't mean politically, I mean as far as time. You can call it pandemic time. So there were a group of people that had more time than perhaps they ever had in their life since they were children or babies. Their time resources went through the roof. And now they're trying to read War and Peace. Now they're learning how to code. Now they're making bread from scratch. I don't mean getting a starter from somebody down the street or going to a bakery. I'm talking about feeding the yeast day in, day out. I've never done it, but I heard it takes a lot. You need a lot of time for that. Suddenly they're able to do all these things that they wanted to do and trying to fill up this time, hopefully in a healthful way. So that's one group. Then you have this other group who actually have their time reserves diminished significantly. They are the first responders. Bless them for all the work they do. For still to this day, for months, they've been time deficient and trying to take care of all of us. There are the people who are food insecure, who are financially insecure. The unemployment rate is off the charts now still. And they're just trying to get through the day. I've been broke before. It takes a lot of time to just get through the day. And people are really struggling right now just to get through the day. And then there are those who have health issues that are significant during this pandemic, or taking care of people in particularly vulnerable situations, such as people who are physically challenged, or people who have very young children, or people who have older relatives that they're taking care of. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. My partner and I have not had a day of peace since March 11th. Not that we're counting. But with this former group who has more time than they ever experienced before, what an opportunity. Within the pain, within the challenges, within the suffering, mentally and otherwise, that all of us are facing right now. This particular group who has more time than ever has such a gift. Again, how many times have we said, if I only had the time for this, then I would do that. Imagine if the universe swept in and said, I'm going to move that boulder. Here you go, here. Now what are you going to do? This isn't from a place of judgment or that you should be productive. It's not a treatise on that. It's more a level of self-honesty. If you believe that you would do this thing if you had more time, and you have more time and you're still not doing that thing, then there must be something else that's stopping you. It doesn't matter whether you do it or not. What matters is why. So remember, there's two things that came out this past year. The first one is this pandemic time. The second thing isn't really new. Well, it's new to some people and has to do with time. And it's more of a reckoning, perhaps more of a recognition for all of us. My friend and fellow author, Nilofer Merchant, when I talked to her about this, about these resources, these fates, this focus, this agility, this time and this energy, she said, well, what about the headwinds? And I just nodded. The headwinds that are against you when you're a person of color. The headwinds that wrap around you and try to hold you when you're born a cis woman. The headwinds that try to push you down when you're part of the LGBTQ community. What about those? The late author Toni Morrison said, the very serious function of racism is distraction. Its goal is to stop you from doing your work. The very serious function of racism is distraction. It stops you from doing your work. So you can replace that, with respect to Mrs. Morrison, with any type of ism, and you'll probably have a similar effect. You might be affected by these isms. That's when I say that I bootstrap my company. It's different to you than it is to me. That's why we don't have the same 24 hours in a day. Because we might have these same resources, this focus, this agility, this time, this energy, these fates. But how they come out might be different because they might be diluted or disturbed or disrupted. That means that if your main thing is energy, then a lot of that energy might be spent yelling and fighting to get into, as they say in Hamilton, in the room where it happened, where people are making judgments about your life and the life of people like you. Your energy is spent trying to get a seat at that table. If your main thing is time, then a lot of that could be spent healing or unwinding a life of setbacks and challenges towards you or people like you. And that might not stop with you. That could be unwinding damage from a generation or 2 or 10. If your main resource is agility, then you're bobbing and weaving, going around the traps, the setbacks, the roadblocks that are put in front of you, consciously or unconsciously, by people or by people who created systems to do just that. And if your main thing is focus, then it might be a little wavering sometimes because you have to worry about the target on your back. But I want you to understand, and I need this to be understood by you, that your resources could be diluted, could be denied, could be stopped, but they will always be there. They will always be at your disposal. They will always be part of you. And no Jim Crow laws, no lavender laws, no voter suppression, no gaslighting can stop you from having your life force, from having your fate, from having your power. And that very combination of things that you have will help unlock a world that's better for all of us. So if your main thing is focus, then you're able to see beyond the distraction, beyond the circus. You're able to see what's important and keep your eyes on the prize. If your main thing is agility, then you're able to bob and weave and run circles around the people or the systems that consciously or unconsciously trying to keep you down in a way where you might actually destroy those very systems. If your main resource is time, then you're able to understand this is a marathon, not a sprint. And that time bends towards justice, as one wise man said. And if your main thing is energy, then people can look you in the eye and they understand that you will not stop until that battle is won. Our particular chemistry, your particular resource allows you to perform an alchemy, a change from lead to gold in this world. That is your secret. And those proverbial headwinds will always bow towards the positive power of human nature. Your simple task is to figure out what your best nature is.